Hey guys, Ryan from Spyker Workshop. Wanted to start out this video and introduce the brand new mini 1X-2 snowblower. It is a all-new snowblower compared to the old mini 1X. And I want to talk right up front about it is currently experimental. We do not have snow in Minnesota yet, so I'm not able to fully test everything on this. But throughout this video, I'll go over features and do some water tests to show you its performance compared to the old one. And as soon as we get snow, I'll be updating with more videos. And I am going to be selling this experimentally before I can fully test it, just because I believe it's really close. The only thing I have left to fine-tune is the actual gear ratio. I talk more about it in the video, but basically there's so many different motors you can put on this and so many different tooth sizes of pinions and pulleys that's really the last thing to fine-tune. So I'm going to be selling it. If you're interested, you can purchase it now. I will make and ship them immediately, and then any changes I make once I get snow here, I'll be selling kind of upgrade kits for any parts that I might change. And of course, if you get the files to print your own, then you will get free updates to any changes. So just kind of a word of caution, if you're not really interested in testing it and seeing how you can get it running and fine-tune it and stuff, you might want to wait till I get it more thoroughly tested and finished. But go ahead and watch the video and see what you think. So I'm going to try a little bit of a water pump test. I did a video similar to this way back in the summer years ago with the original, and it gets kind of a good idea of how much water it can push through, because a snowblower is very similar to a water pump. So let's see what happens here. So that test was the same voltage as the mini old 1X. Both of these were on 7.2 volts. So now I'm going to change it to a 12 volt 3S. So here is another test, just to kind of show you at what point, or as you submerge it in water, basically how much load the motor can handle. So this is the old 1X on 7.2 volts. And then here is the new 1X-2 on 7.2 volts. And here's the new 1X-2 on 12 volts, so 3-cell LiPo. So you can see there's quite a difference. The new larger 775 motor just has so much torque, it doesn't really get bogged down. So it should perform pretty well once we get some snow. So one of the biggest changes on the new one is instead of a bevel gear, the transmission here, the old one had an inline bevel gear. So you can see the impeller is actually the same size as the auger. On the new one, it uses a worm gear. So just like a real full-size gas snowblower, the worm gear actually sits on top of the shaft. So you're able to do a much larger diameter impeller. This one's about 1 inch bigger diameter. And then that also does another thing, which is the worm gears have a much higher gear ratio. So as the impeller spins, I think it's a 20 to 1 gear reduction, which means that most of the motor's power is going to the impeller. On this one, a lot of the RPM was kind of wasted because the auger spun so fast on that, and it really doesn't need to spin fast at all. The only purpose of the auger is to feed snow into the impeller. So back when I designed this, I had a limitation of not being able to manufacture worm gears, but on this one I ended up actually purchasing, I found a good supplier of brass and steel worm gears. So the gear set is really the only difficult piece to track down if you're trying to print your own, but I will be selling just the gears on their own from my website. The old one, I was injection molding plastic gears, which worked okay. I expect the steel worm gear set to last like much longer and be a lot more reliable. Another big difference is on this one I had a slipper clutch that was on the back side here. So you would tighten this to adjust a clutch pad. It was actually a Traxxas part. However, that didn't protect the auger itself. So on the new version, I have a new design that there's actually a threaded rod that goes through the whole assembly. And then the augers are actually on a piece of brass tube. So the impeller spins, or the auger spins freely on the shaft. But I'm using nylon washers with some spring washers. It's really common parts. And on both sides, you can see a lot more info once I start getting up the instruction manual and stuff that goes into a lot more depth. But basically this is pinching the auger in between the nylon discs, which are basically acting as the slipper clutch. So if you see here, there's like quite a bit of resistance on these, and you can adjust it by loosening and tightening that. But what this will do is basically all three aspects of this new snowblower have a clutch design on it. So it should be a lot easier on parts. Say you get a rock or a piece of ice stuck in here. And then similarly on the original, the actual impeller has a slipper, the exact same design as the auger. However, it's on the back here. And then that also lets the clutch slip. And then the way you can adjust the tension on them is there's these spring washers. It's kind of hard to see here, but it's a washer that's kind of bowed. So you can stack multiple washers to get more tension on it. So if this slips too easily, you can either try tightening it more or adding another spring washer on there, and it will actually give it more tension. And then the spring washers, they also make it so if you slip quite a bit and the nylon discs start to wear down a little, the springs will keep tension on it for a little while until it wears out too much, you know. But you can tell, or you will be able to tell if something's slipping. You'll notice a lot less snow coming out. And then if we move to the back here, another big change on this is I'll be selling a upgrade for a 360-degree chute rotation. So you can see I got powered on here, and very similar to the old style, upside down servo to keep water out. And then the chute rotation or chute elevation you can adjust on the radio now. It uses a system very similar if you've built my larger 2X snowblower. Underneath here there's 3 extension springs that go around a basically a slip ring. But this is a much simpler setup. It's one piece and you use brass wire. I have a setup here that I did an earlier prototype, but it's very easy to put this together. So you put some thick brass wire, which will come with the kit. You wrap it around the grooves, and then there's special channels that the wire comes up through. And then you kind of twist them together, which kind of pulls them tight. And then this will be your actual leads where you'll solder the 3 wires. You can see like right here, these 3 here. And it's pretty compact, so if you don't run the servo up here, with this, like I said, it's going to be a separate upgrade. Then the whole chute is just about like 20 millimeters lower. So you can run it with or without that. Without it, it's like my original one where you just manually set the chute where you want it to be. And I'm selling it separate just because it adds quite a bit of cost. So some people might want to save some money and not use that at least right away. And then it will also have a light on the top. Since there's power going up to that servo, I made use of these are the light circuit boards that I made back on the Cybercat. Same with the front here. And the lights will also be sold separately. If you do not buy the lights with it, you'll save quite a bit of money. And then the kit comes with these blank covers. So if you don't use the lights, it still looks really nice with these covers there. And then kind of saving the biggest change for the end here. One of the biggest changes from the original would run a 540 sized brush motor. But on this new one, you can actually step all the way up to a 775 brushed motor. And you can use these also. So my motor mount, I got a aluminum mount. This is also another upgrade part. The one that, if you don't get the upgrade motor, there's a really thick plastic one, which works pretty good too. But on the bolt pattern, it allows for the 550 size or the 775. And then both these bolt patterns also line up with most of the brushless motors. So there's quite a few different motor options available. So it's a lot easier to work on this one versus the old one too. So for example, the belt cover in the back, it's actually 2 pieces. So without disconnecting it from your machine, as long as you can get a screwdriver right here, you can remove that. Say if you wanted to try a different size pinion, you adjust the belt tension on the motor mount. And then this is what is in there. So these parts might change by the time it's out because we don't actually have any snow here yet. So currently I'm not able to test this in the snow. And really the only things that I'll be changing is most likely just the gear ratio. So that will probably end up changing. For now I'm trying this 80 tooth pinion and the 16 tooth motor pinion. And these parts are 3D printer pulleys, so they're extremely common components that you can get probably on Amazon locally. And then the kit will come with at least 1 set, and then I'll probably have others sold separately on my website in case you want to, because it's kind of hard since you can put so many different size motors. The gear ratio will affect the performance of it like a lot, so you might want to try different setups to get the right torque basically. And then there is enough room in there to run an even larger, this is a 100 tooth pulley. Not sure if this will be necessary because this will slow it down quite a bit. And then there's you can go all the way up to a 40 tooth motor pinion, so there's tons of different options. And then the belt sizes will probably change depending on what you're actually running. But there's quite a bit of adjustment on the motor mount. And that's kind of specifics I'll be updating as we get snow here, so I can test this thing a lot more. Towards the end of this video, I'm going to be doing a water test, so you can see. It's really the only test I can do right now until we actually get the right weather for this. So then, to talk about a little about the actual running of it, so this current setup, these are the same motors I was using in the Cybercat, if you followed that at all. These can be run as low as 7 volts, but obviously be not as good performance. Currently this is running on a 12 volt LiPo, and that's what this is here. And this is actually a 20 tooth pinion. But like I said, I'm gonna have to do a lot of testing. But what's cool about this whole new motor setup is this can actually be pushed up to 24 volts. So once I get everything working and dialed in, you can actually be running this small snowblower at 6S LiPo. I believe the transmission will handle it too, because basically everything is all metal. The only thing that is plastic is the actual impeller. And the slipper clutch system will reduce breakages of the impeller, but cannot eliminate it fully. So because of that, I made sure to design a really easy way to get at the impeller in case it breaks. There's 4 screws on the end here, and then 2 screws here, and then the whole assembly comes out. So after you remove the 2 end screws and these 2 middle ones, you can actually pull it straight out. And you can do it with it still connected to the machine. And then the impeller, it's just loosely in there with the hex in there. So you can see the motor is just driving that, I believe it's 13 millimeter hex. And then the impeller has a groove in there, so it won't go too far back or forward. And then on the auger assembly, the exact same thing is on this end. So the actual drive shafts are hex bolts, and then you counter tighten the hex threaded spacer, so this gets locked to the screw. And then inside here is where the worm gear is, these parts here. So it's a pretty simple setup. And then the auger itself, it's quite a different design from my earlier one. Like I mentioned, there's a brass tube in there. So the whole auger is assembled first, then it gets pushed onto the shaft here. And then here's a close-up of that slipper clutch assembly I was talking about. So you can see those spring washers in there. And they look like this when they're not on there. So you can see they're kind of bent. So it puts a spring pressure. And then there's some nylon washers. These work really well at spreading out the heat. So when this slips, it will generate a lot of heat there, you know, because it's like a friction brake pad almost. But the heat kind of stays within the nylon. It doesn't really spread out that much. So I did quite a few different tests with different materials, and this I believe should work really well. And like I said, can't do too much testing till we actually get snow to use this thing in. So then here you can see the actual RPM. So the auger moves much slower on this one, but that's all you really need because it's just moving the snow from out here to the center. So my old one, like I mentioned, it wasted a lot of torque from the motor because a lot of the motor's energy was spent on moving the auger. So it kind of took away from its throwing power. And that, coupled with the fact that this new one here is 1 inch larger diameter, actually means that there's a higher tip speed on this impeller, so it should be able to throw the snow farther. Assuming I can figure out the correct gear ratios to the motor and stuff, because there's so many different options for putting a motor on this. And I will be selling like electronics kit, which will come default with the 775 motor, but you can pretty much use anything as long as it's high torque. You want to aim for high torque over high speed. So here is another test to show you the slipper clutch in action. So I'm going to put a wrench in there to simulate if a rock got stuck in the impeller. So you can hear it's working like that. And you can definitely notice when to quick cut the throttle. That protects all the drivetrain in the back. And a couple things is on the back here where I put, it's a kind of a better view of it, this extra bearing out here. Since it spans across and there's one on the inside, the belt tension can handle it stalling without skipping teeth on the belt, even though there's quite a lot of torque going on here. The whole assembly is a lot more rigid than the old style. And then, like I mentioned, there's actually 3 clutches, so one on the impeller and then one on each auger. So you can see here, so these new clutches should protect the whole drivetrain quite a lot more. And then one other thing to quick mention is, it's kind of hard to see from here, but the belt cover actually houses another bearing. So that hex thing that's sticking out in here where the impeller sits on, it's actually housed with a bearing on each side of the pulley. So as you put tension on the belt and it gets under a lot of torque and stuff, that axle will stay nice and solid. My old style, it kind of could get a little wobbly, I guess, if there was too much going on. So that's kind of a big design change there too. And then I guess the last thing to mention is it has the same exact bracket that was on the old 1X. So if you already have one of my old blowers, this is a direct replacement, like snaps right on to the old mounting kit. I didn't change a single thing on the actual like vehicle side. The only thing that's different here is obviously the bracket to the snowblower, which you will pick which one you want when you order. And then another thing I changed here too is that there's a slot here. So you got a little bit more of a fine adjustment for where the snowblower sits compared to your vehicle. So the old one used curved panels, so I had to keep them kind of thin so they would be able to go around the rounded edge. The new design, I went with a square body so I could make these much thicker. And then I kind of did a design like this here to screw everything together. So where the seam is, it's actually basically a angled groove, so it kind of seals it up. So this new body is much stronger. And then it has a very similar scraper bar underneath. And then I guess also forgot to talk about the dimensions. So this is one of the original prototypes. I since made it a little bit taller. But the new snowblower, it is the same snowblowing height. The old one was 6 inches. This one's also 6 inches. I actually put these height grooves on the end too, so this is how many inches of snow you can kind of see while it's snowblowing. And then the width of it, this is, I think it was like 1.5 inches more wide than the old one, but very similar overall proportions. You can see too, like a side view. The new snowblower is actually shorter. Even though it has all this extra features, it's a little bit shorter than the original one. So I thought I'd quick weigh them also to see a difference. Please keep in mind this one I've stripped down parts over the years. I don't actually have the servo on it right now. But this one was about 3 pounds 6 ounces, and the new one is just about 5 pounds. So it is about 1.5 pounds heavier. And of course, if you didn't go with some of the upgrade parts, you could reduce the weight, like if your vehicle struggles to lift it. I had no problem though lifting it with just the basic 110 kg servos that I've been shipping with those for forever. And then also the motor weighs quite a bit more than the 540 sized. So if weight was an issue, you could maybe reduce the motor size and stuff, but I had no problems lifting it with the stock front mount on my Blizzard there. Still have to test it on some other vehicles. So I wanted to quick show you what it will look like on a TRX4 Blazer. This is the one I believe has like a higher lift. And I'll be making a video of how to put this together, the snowblower, and then how to mount it to a TRX4. But you can get kind of a good scale reference. It matches it pretty well, I think. Actually, on the Blazer too, you can. It's quite a lot more scale because you can actually look out over the window, unlike on the Kyosho Blizzard. But yeah, coming soon will be a how to assemble video of an orange one and how to mount it on the TRX4. I also have a TRX6 flatbed truck coming that I'll be making another one to put on there, probably another video. But that probably is similar, like the understructure, I would guess, is similar to the TRX4. Another thing to mention is I am currently working on the instruction video. So if you purchase this now, it will be a little bit of a delay to get the actual instructions out, but you should get orders in the mail right around the same time that the video comes out. So this wraps up kind of the overview of the new 1X-2 snowblower. And like I mentioned, I will be selling these before I can actually test them in the snow, because our forecast here has been really weird this year. It's been in the 50s. Filming this on Christmas Day, and it's in, I think it was 54 Fahrenheit here. No snow in the forecast, but I know quite a bit of states across the country are getting snow right now. The main thing that could change is the gear ratio, and maybe some other things I'm not thinking of. But if you are interested in purchasing this ahead of time, I will be selling any changes I do later as like upgrade kits. And then of course, if you buy the files to print your own, any file changes will come as free updates. But I didn't want to wait any longer because it's getting kind of towards the middle of winter. So I want to get this out, and maybe other people can try it out in the snow and see how it performs. But it is, like I mentioned, just mainly the issue of getting the right motor sized to the different gear ratios. That's really the only thing left to figure out, and that's very easy to change. It's literally just swapping in and out pulleys. And then of course voltage, there's so many different variables in there. But yeah, let me know thoughts and stuff, and thanks for watching. Let's see if I can do this without soaking the whole garage.